Okay. My name is Joyce Mahoney. I am Director of Catholic Charities Harbor House Domestic Violence Shelter here in Wichita. You won't see a sign in front of Harbor House. I hope that most of you have no idea where we are. We are in an undisclosed location for the safety of the women and children that stay at our facility. The typical woman staying at our facility is between 25 and 30 years old. She has 1 to 2 children, which may or may not be with her, but most likely she has been living in poverty. Living in poverty makes it more difficult to escape a violent relationship, especially when the abuser is sabotaging her attempts to become financially independent. However, there are exceptions. When Sarah arrived at Harbor House, she wasn't the typical client. Her husband was in the military. To the outside world, she appeared to be living the American dream as a stay-at-home mom. However, that dream turned into a nightmare after the children went to college. Her life consisted of extreme isolation, beatings, and verbal abuse. Gradually, over a 15-year period, she became so isolated from her family and friends that when she came to Harbor House, she could not remember the last time that she had had a guest in her home. She thought it was about 10 years. The last beating came as a result of going to a job interview and getting a job. Most abusers isolate their victims and don't want them to work because that would be financial independence. The next day after he left for work, she called Harbor House. We safety planned and got her into shelter. She had a college degree, so she was able to get a good job with a national company. One day she came back to Harbor House after work and came running up to me, and she was so excited. I said, "Did you have a good day?" And she goes, "Yes, I have a friend." It's the first friend she had had in 10 years. Finally, she decided she couldn't be safe in Wichita. She was employed with a national company, so we helped her get a Greyhound ticket out of town. The last time we heard from her, she was enjoying life, her job, and her friends. For the past 21 years, Catholic Charities has provided safe temporary shelter and outreach services to women and children who are victims of domestic violence. We've been at our current location for 9 years. We're one of 2 domestic violence shelters here in Wichita, providing 62% of the bed space. We have 12 rooms. Each woman or family gets their own room. Single women share. We provide services to domestic violence victims who are in imminent danger from their abuser. We serve intimate partner domestic violence as well as women victimized by a parent, sibling, or other family member. Our services are listed on the brochure that I just handed out, so I'm not going to go through all of those, but I want to highlight some of them. We offer early childhood development screenings for the children under 5. Our children's counselor also sets up bus service for the children so they can get to the same school that they were in. Sometimes it isn't safe, so she'll arrange for them to get enrolled in a new school. We have therapeutic counseling for women and children who give referrals for drug alcohol programs as well as mental health services. We are one of the very few shelters in the state of Kansas who has a full-time women's and children's counselor. We provide life skill classes to the women as well as a domestic violence education class. This is usually one of the favorite classes for the women because it helps them realize that they were really abused. It's very rewarding to them to know that it isn't their fault. They've spent years with their abuser who has stripped them of their self-esteem, telling them that it was her fault that he had to abuse her. We hear the excuse from the abuser, "If you would have had dinner on the table at 6 o'clock, I wouldn't have beat you." These women come into shelter brainwashed, thinking that the abuse was their fault. So we spend a good amount of our time counseling with them and helping them to move on. I think it's important for us to provide a home-like atmosphere for the women and children. So we celebrate holidays, we provide cakes and birthday gifts to the children. I've seen sad tears turn into happy tears when a woman realizes that this year she'll be able to give her child a cake and a present. Our children's counselors are already planning events for spring break. These therapeutic activities include a family game night with Minute to Win It, bowling, an outing to Exploration Place, Botanica, and the zoo. Our families are so blessed to have such a compassionate children's counselor who recognizes that healing takes place as the women and children are able to relax as a family and celebrate being together in a safe environment. In 2013, we turned away an average of 51 women per month because we didn't have room in the shelter. We provide outreach services as well to the women as in the courts, in the hospitals, and DCF through a program called SAFE. We operate a unique service design complementing shelter staff with outreach staff, and we serve the Wichita community as well as 25 counties in the southwest quarter of the state with our SAFE program through the DCF. We have a full-time case manager who specializes in housing. This is something new for us. Before, our case managers just took care, they divided the women up and took care of each woman. But this year, we decided to have one of the case managers specialize in housing. She's assisted 23 families with almost $45,000 through the Rapid Rehousing Program, which has changed lives of these women. They're able to start out fresh, not in the hole like they usually are. The length of our stay is 6 weeks, but we don't cap the stay. This leads to stronger outcomes, higher rates of employment, and fewer returns to the abuser. We believe that education is an important part of success for these women. We were honored by Wichita State University for our referrals to the Wichita TRIO program last year. Our staff has a combined 90 years of experience in the domestic violence field. Our staff is competent and committed as reflected by the average length of employment is 5 years. 90% of staff have a bachelor's degrees and several have master's degrees. We have a duty to protect and guide the next generation. When we are silent, the abuse flourishes. One of the greatest risk factors for transmitting violence from one generation to the next is witnessing violence between one's parents or caregivers. We help women reclaim their dignity and self-esteem one step at a time. They crawl in as victims, but they walk out as survivors with their heads held high. In 2012-13, 85% exited to safe housing, 94% did not return to their abuser. We could not do what we do at Harbor House without your continued support. With your support, we empower these survivors while they transform their lives and build a solid future for their families. The next generation depends on it. Thank you.
Hey, are there any questions for Catholic Charities regarding their proposal?
I want to make sure I heard right. Did you say 50 women a month or turned away because you
51,
don't?
yes.
Okay. Okay.
Women and children.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Who wishes to ask questions or comment on the presentation? We've got about 2.5 minutes left of her allotted time. If not, we'll move to the next presentation, which is Stepstone.
Good afternoon. I'm Yoon Kimball, and I'm the Program Director for Stepstone. Thank you for taking time out of your busy schedules to listen to our proposal today. We have been blessed to have been able to receive CDBG funding for our children's services the last 2 years. This year, we are asking for the same allocation that we received last year, being mindful that there has been a decrease in total funding for women's services. For the last 2 years, CDBG funds have allowed Stepstone to grow children's services and provide intensive counseling and advocacy primarily for the youth at Stepstone. From reading our grant, you know that we would like to be able to sustain the goals that are set for this grant, to continue therapy for the youth, and in some cases, family counseling sessions, parenting classes offered by our therapist, a homework club, and children's activities. In the last grant year, Stepstone served 57 women and children through our children's services. As of February 28th of 2014, we've served 32 women and children in this fiscal year's grant. As is stated in the grant, children who have been exposed to multiple adverse childhood experiences such as abuse, neglect, or a mother being treated violently are at a greater risk of developing long-term behavioral, health, and social problems. Through Stepstone Children's Services, we are little by little trying to counteract these experiences before the aforementioned goals. Children are resilient, but after multiple traumas in their lives, they also lose trust, especially in those that have been trusted to provide their care. For women and children who are survivors of domestic violence, Stepstone is able to provide stable transitional housing and supportive services for up to 2 years, and follow-up services indefinitely therefore afterwards. The therapist funded through CDBG has the opportunity to provide free therapeutic counseling in the time that they're with us. Counseling with children can be tricky, and not everyone has a gift nor a love for it. When most of us think of counseling, we see a comfortable couch, a desk, and a leather chair for the counselor. There are also a lot of cerebral books probably on the bookshelf. There is the 50-minute hour, and then an appointment may be made for the next week or a month afterwards. The only details that the counselor may know is what is told to them during the session or from other collaborators. These are very sterile environments that work for some people. For the women and children who are served at Stepstone, that is not the case. They come to us primarily from the 2 domestic violence shelters here in town, Catholic Charities Harbor House and the YWCA Women's Crisis Center. They're broken and suffering from the effects of family violence. As they slowly work to piece things together, we have constant reminders as staff that what may work for one individual may not work for another. Stepstone staff works as a team, and counseling services for the women and children are an integral part of this. The therapeutic services, especially the children's counseling, is unique from many other counseling services. I would like to give you some examples of the work that the staff in Children's Services does. This past January on Martin Luther King Day, the children, along with a child therapist and 3 social work interns, went through the Hilltop area, which is an extremely impoverished area of Wichita, picking up trash. They also recently went to Sheridan Village, a senior retirement facility, and decorated cookies and played bingo with the seniors there. They are currently also working on a Dr. Seuss skit for the month and will be having activities including making green eggs and ham with the retired sisters from the Congregation of St. Joseph. We have managed to also talk our community police officer to play the part of the Cat in the Hat that day. Last summer, the kids went on a ropes course facilitated by Higher Ground. Through this ropes course, they learned the values of trust, teamwork, and friendship. All of these activities, along with the regular homework club, build trust, resiliency, and empathy among the children. It also counteracts some of the adverse childhood experiences they may have had. Our CDBG-funded therapist is also very unique. Anita has had over 40 years of therapeutic counseling experience, primarily working with children. I honestly believe that she took this job, as she calls it, in her twilight years, in order to be able to play with kids without the restraints of billing, tedious paperwork, or diagnosing. Many times I will walk past the counseling office and she's on the floor doing a puzzle or playing a board game with a child. Others may see it as Stepstone paying a staff member to play. Well, that's exactly what she's doing. Research has shown that traditional talk therapy does not work with children and that play therapy does work, especially for children who are not verbally responsive. It really is amazing what a child will tell you when you're coloring a picture with them or making a craft with them. Our therapist, who is in her mid-70s, picks up kids right after school and will meet them for counseling sessions and then take them home because they need to be there when their younger sisters or siblings get home. This is done to accommodate mom who works 8 to 5 and is unable to drive them to Anita for counseling. Anita works multiple evenings and has 2 standing Saturday morning appointments. She does not have any sessions after 7 p.m. because she believes that this is family time, and kids should be getting ready for bed, and mom should have quality time with her children every day. I think most of us would be hard-pressed to find any counseling centers that would pick kids up from school for counseling, then take them home afterwards, or do Saturday morning family counseling sessions in the home. We have a beautiful little girl who joined the program with her mom last year. She was extremely timid when she first met us and hid behind Mom a lot of times and refused to speak to us. Through Anita's work, this young girl has blossomed. Without going into details due to confidentiality, she came to us with extreme adverse childhood experiences, remembering that some of them are due to abuse, neglect, or violence against Mom. Though this young girl still experiences occasional nightmares, she now comes in with a smile on her face, a hug for all, and one simple request: I want to see Miss Anita today. Sometimes we wonder if we make a difference in anyone's lives. We don't know what is going to happen to this girl into adulthood, but I'm sure that it will be a very pleasant surprise for all of us. Counseling services can be an invaluable tool to be utilized, especially if all of us had our own Miss Anita, to do a puzzle with us or color with us when we were feeling sad and not knowing what to do with our feelings of being lost and not heard.
Thank you. Are there any questions for the Stepstone representative or their program? Yes, sir.
How many homes do you have?
We currently have 15 homes, but we also can house 5 additional families in a Department of Justice grant, so we can house up to 20 families at a time.
And you have volunteers, 10 volunteers also on staff that help you?
We have multitudes of volunteers who help us. When the houses turn over, the volunteers will come in along with our maintenance staff and turn over the homes for us. There are receptionists. They help us with support group. We have volunteer gardeners who will hopefully help us do a children's garden this summer in a plot that has been reserved for Stepstone. So we do utilize a lot of volunteers. There's not a whole lot of paid staff at Stepstone.
Other questions? If not, we thank you. The third presentation under Women's Services is from the YWCA, and I'd invite the representative to come forward, and as she does, I want to remind the Grants Review Committee members that you do have rating sheets, blue rating sheets that were with your agenda, so if you want to, make sure that you're making your notes and have them ready to bring to us next week.
Good afternoon. My name is Angela Lampy, and I am the Executive Director for the YWCA Wichita, and we operate the Women's Crisis Center. Domestic violence impacts all of us. We all know someone who is experiencing or has experienced domestic violence, whether we are aware of it or not. A national study conducted by the Centers for Disease Control found that 1 in 3 women and 1 in 7 men will experience intimate partner violence in their lifetime. We also know that 63% of homeless women have experienced intimate partner abuse in their lifetime. A 2003 survey of homeless mothers around the country found that 1/4 had been physically abused in the past year, and almost all had experienced or witnessed domestic violence over their lifetimes. The YWCA Wichita Women's Crisis Center offers a range of services designed to provide support, healing, and safety to victims of sexual and domestic violence. All of our services are available through both shelter and outreach programming. Some victims come to us while still in an abusive relationship, and they cannot leave at this time. Often, that is due to financial barriers or safety concerns. For victims in the process of leaving a domestic violence situation, safety is paramount, as this is the time a victim is most likely to be killed by her abuser. Domestic and sexual violence leave emotional and physical scars, and victims may require ongoing services even after leaving the abuser, as they work to heal from the trauma and to restore their families. Regardless of where a victim is in her process, each victim has access to a full range of services through the Women's Crisis Center. Advocates work with victims to identify their needs and goals, determine how these can be achieved safely and sustainably, and support victims through their personal process. Services offered by the Women's Crisis Center include supportive counseling, safety planning, shelter, court advocacy, medical advocacy, parent and child support, information and referrals, transportation, therapy, food, clothing, and other basic needs. Advocates also provide assistance with filing victims' compensation claims, seeking employment, and securing housing. More than 6 different support groups are offered through the Women's Crisis Center. We have a 24-hour, 7-day-a-week live answer hotline as well that victims who are experiencing abuse, family members, or those just with questions on a situation related to domestic violence can call and have someone answer the questions and be there to support them. In 2013, the Women's Crisis Center served 267 women and children through shelter and 832 victims through outreach services. We also provided professional training and educational presentations to almost 5,000 individuals in the community. Despite our best efforts, need continues to exceed capacity. The Women's Crisis Center saw a 53% increase in the number of individuals seeking shelter due to domestic violence issues last year, resulting in 194 women and 357 children being turned away due to lack of space. Each day, the YWCA Women's Crisis Center works with survivors who are struggling to overcome a variety of barriers, from achieving basic safety to starting over with nothing but the clothes they were wearing when they entered our doors. Take, for example, a victim that we will call Jane. Jane came to the YWCA Women's Crisis Center after surviving multiple abusive relationships. After an incident with her most recent abuser that caused her to fear for her life, Jane filed a protection from abuse order to protect herself. However, the abuser continued to threaten Jane even after the order was put into effect. Jane then called the YWCA Women's Crisis Center hotline for assistance and promptly entered shelter. She spent 2 months in a safe and secure environment. During this time, she was able to focus on her schoolwork that would ultimately lead her to attainment of employment at a self-sufficient wage. She also worked with her advocates to address multiple effects of her long-term traumatic experiences. Advocates at the YWCA worked with other community partners to secure long-term housing for Jane. She moved out of the Women's Crisis Center and into her own apartment. We were able to help her furnish that through our thrift store and through other community partners. Jane has continued to stay in touch with advocates at the Women's Crisis Center and remains in her current house where she is living safely and independently today. Recently, we received a note from Jane that stated, "To the YWCA staff, I would like to take a moment to say thank you for all of your generosity, compassion, and time. You gave me my life back through your kindness and opening your door and your hearts when I had nowhere else to turn. You've endured my flaws, my complaints, and you did it with style. You have empowered me to the point of the ability of recognizing that I can do this. So, thank you all." While Jane's story serves to illustrate the struggles of one domestic violence victim, domestic violence is not simply a problem of individuals. Rather, domestic violence is a community problem requiring a community solution. Preventing and eliminating domestic violence requires that individuals, organizations, and systems come together to create a community that centralizes victim safety, perpetrator accountability, and changing the norms that permit domestic violence to continue. Unlike so many social problems that seem overwhelming and beyond the reach of the average citizen, there are tangible steps, big and small, that each and every member of our community can take to end domestic violence. The YWCA Wichita is very fortunate to have strong community partners that we work with to eliminate domestic violence, such as the City Prosecutor's Office, the District Attorney's Office, the Wichita Police Department, the Sheriff's Department, and also our local victim services providers. It takes all of these entities to continue to bring awareness to the prevalence of domestic violence in South Central Kansas and to connect those in need to the resources best suited for each individual's particular situation and personal safety. The YWCA Wichita Women's Crisis Center respectfully requests favorable consideration by this group in the City of Wichita to continue level funding for the much-needed emergency shelter services we provide. We propose to provide emergency shelter, safety planning, and advocacy services to a minimum of 200 individuals over the next program year. We will measure the success and the overall impact of these dollars by ensuring that the adult clients all develop safety plans and are able to identify the barriers that they face for their own personal safety and how they can overcome those. We will make sure that all individuals in shelter will receive the adequate resources and referrals to develop their own sustainable, self-sufficient living situation. We will work with all adult clients to make sure that they gain the knowledge of the dynamics of domestic violence and its impacts on not only themselves but their children and their families. We also work one-on-one with children who are in shelter to learn the same pieces on what does a healthy relationship look like, and we do several activities to help stop or minimize that perpetuation of violence from one generation to the next. We will ensure that a minimum of 75% of our adult clients also will attend and be connected through support groups and classes that we offer, so that they have that feeling of connectedness and support as they are moving out of shelter and into their own stable, self-sufficient housing. Thank you very much for your time this afternoon and your consideration of our proposal.
Thank you very much. That concludes the Women's Services presentations, but we do have 3 minutes left in Angela's time for questions from the Grants Review Committee or the public.
Just curious, what kind of percentage of these women maybe leave in the middle of your program and then want to come back later, or?
We do invite individuals who choose to leave, and we don't have a set program as far as time frame. Some may leave after a couple of days. They just needed an immediate safe place to go. Some may stay for 6 weeks and leave for their own place of employment, but later on in their lives re-engage in a relationship that is maybe not the most healthy for them. So our doors are always open, although, of course, while they're with us, we try and ensure that they have information available to them on what they should expect and out of a relationship, what a healthy relationship looks like, to try and prevent that from occurring, but we do see that on occasion.
I had kind of just a related question. The proposal says stays typically 6 to 10 weeks. Have you got an average length of stay?
30 to 45 days. Yes, sir.
I was interested in how often you check to see how outcomes are matching your expectations.
We actually monthly do reports that we compile once our data is entered for the month in our ALICE database, which is the statewide implemented database for domestic violence shelters. Certainly. Yes, sir.
These are all addressed to women. Is there any attempt to make the abuser?
So I will say that is not my area of specialty. We do have multiple batterers intervention program providers in our community. We collaborate with them through the Wichita-Sedgwick County Coalition Against Sexual and Domestic Violence. So we do communicate and work together, but our agency does not focus on the perpetrator. Our agency focuses on the victims, and there are other programs in the community that focus on the batterer. We do work with them, though, to look at opportunities within the system for improvement.
I recognize that your question was for YWCA, but I'm wondering if the other two women's services providers would want to add to that, or would that have been your answer as well?
Yes, it would be my answer as well, but we do serve men that have been abused. We recognize that men are abused by women also, and we do serve men in an outreach program. If they need a place to stay, we have very limited hotel funds, but we have in the past been able to get them into a hotel to get to safety.
And we have that question frequently as well, since our title is Women's Crisis Center. Yes, we serve men through shelter and through our outreach services predominantly. The gentlemen that we have served over the past few years have come through outreach services, but on a rare occasion we do have gentlemen that need immediate emergency shelter for overnight as well.
Okay. Okay, and since I shared some of your time with Catholic
Oh, no,
Charities, I'm
that's
going to
fine.
entertain one more question.
I don't know if this is a question or more of a comment. We've just listened to 3 presentations,
Yes, sir.
and there's not much difference in what your services are. And in my other life, I participated in several organizations, and we, with our dollars getting smaller and smaller, we collaborated with the other entities that provide the same service. Is that going on now with you and the other groups
We
that are
all
involved?
work very closely together, especially with the capacity challenges that both of the emergency shelters face, Harbor House and the Women's Crisis Center. We are probably daily on the phone with one another. Do you have space if we're full, and vice versa? We also have close relationships with our sister programs, even extending further out to make sure, because of the need that there is in our community, to make sure that we are able to connect those individuals with a safe place to stay. If they do not need that immediate shelter, then we will serve them through our outreach programming.
Yeah, okay. Well, I know in the past, the overhead ate up a couple of us, and we just had to join forces, and instead of 3 big organizations, every once in a while it got down to 1 or 2.
Is there a question for that?
That might be more of a commentary than a question.
Certainly.
I think I know the answer, but when you said sister agencies, for Harbor House, that's Catholic Social Services, and for you, that would be?
Oh, I was just referring to the other domestic violence shelters
okay.
throughout the state. So there's one in Newton, there's one in Winfield, El Dorado. So if in Wichita, either the Women's Crisis Center or Harbor House are not able to provide a bed in that immediate situation, we will then work with those shelters that are close.
To partially answer your question, Stepstone does not provide emergency shelter. We are a transitional housing program. So our referrals actually come from Harbor House and the YWCA. And we can house the families for up to 2 years versus the 6 weeks or the 30 to 45 days. So the referrals actually come from the 2 shelters to Stepstone.
Okay, thank you.
Okay.
Certainly.
This concludes, as I was about to say earlier, this concludes the CDBG Women's Services presentations from the 3 proposers. My suggestion at this point is that we return to the home program because the next set of proposers may not be here yet because their times were a little bit later. So
Do we fill out 3 sheets, 1 for each presenter?
Yes. Andy Bias is here with with Mennonite Rehabilitation Housing Services, and his application is for home funds. So Grants Review Committee members, if you would turn to that section of your notebooks, we will give Andy 5 minutes to talk. Quite a challenge, I know. And we'll have 5 minutes for questions. Andy?
Good afternoon. Again, I'm Andy Bias, President and CEO of Mennonite Housing, and today I stand before you with respect to the application for home funds from the City of Wichita to complement what we call our Neighborhood Home Program. The city endorses a homeownership 80 program that targets affordable housing in the neighborhood revitalization areas throughout Wichita. We've had the very good fortune to partner with the city. Now, this is the 16th year, and we've tried to provide quality, affordable housings, primarily in local investment areas, to target economic development, to target community beautification, and affordability for those areas. These homes, on average, are 1,000 square feet, 3-bedroom units, full basements, 2-car garage. In our application, because of the home funds, for this aspect of it, we usually target 4 to 5 houses. This application will have 4. What we try to do is this, those of you that are not familiar with the home program. Mennonite Housing will construct a house for approximately $115,000. Because of the locations, we sell those houses in the range of about $90,000. That difference is supplemented with home funds from the city of Wichita. The eligible consumer that qualifies for Home 80 it will be sold to them for the 90. However, they'll secure a loan from one of the local banks. That loan, though, is not for the 90, but it will be complemented with additional funds from the city to help them. So they may, in turn, get a loan for $70,000. To continue to leverage the dollars, we've been fortunate to secure funds, oftentimes from Federal Home Loan Bank of Topeka, and assist in down payment and closing costs. So they may have up to $5,000, $4,000 to $5,000 from the Federal Home Loan Bank. So ultimately ending up with a $65,000 loan for a $115,000 house. It's been a good fit. We've continued to recruit and advertise and endorse quality houses in our local investment areas. We understand that the dynamic of home funds is changing, and we're encouraged to have all of the units that we prescribe to have them pre-sold so that at the end of construction we have a transaction. Under the current home funds, if it's not sold, then you have 6 to 9 months to sell it, or then it becomes a rental. So we'd like to continue to champion the home ownership with these dollars, and that's why we focus on having it pre-sold beforehand. Again, it's been a very good partnership. There are those challenges with affordability for folks, but in our recruitment of them, those that are ready for purchase at the time of the recruit, great. We try to identify a house and their timeline. If they're not ready, we either work with them or identify credit counseling services that can assist, and we keep them engaged in the process. It's really never a no. It's always a win. So that's the upside with the program, the complementary dollars that really target affordability, the quality of the house, the location, and improving those areas. What we've tried to do, too, is even though collectively it's infield, we really try to work in areas where we're going to impact more than one unit. We've had the good fortune. This application is for what we call internally as our LIA funds, but there's also 2 other programs that complement all of these. We have a housing development loan program and a boarded up house program that we work collectively in improving communities and areas that need quality houses. So I'm here today to ask for your continued support as a community housing development organization, still trying to beautify the communities, provide quality, affordable housing for folks that want to stay in these areas. And I'll entertain any questions at this time. I know Michael was going to have one.
I've got one question. After the closing and you give the keys, is there any follow-up you do to assure that the homes are kept up, or are you through with it then?
Well, everyone goes through what's called a homeownership training class. And then many of our areas, we still stay active in that. So we know of what's going on in those communities. And if they need any assistance, they're encouraged to either let us know or let the financial institution know that if they have any challenges. I will share with you, though, this is my 16th year, and we've produced probably 150 to 160 units, and I only know of 1 foreclosure in that entire time.
Thank you.
Yes, sir.
You've been funded in the past, and have you turned all that money into houses?
Yes, sir.
Are they occupied?
Yes, sir.
Do you incorporate any parts of universal design in these homes that's popular concept so that you use
Absolutely. As a matter of fact, some of the universal design aspects are the same that are required for home dollars. So it's almost the same thing. So we adhere to the home funds and just very complimentary to universal designs. Yes, Miss Nancy.
There's a mention in the summary that says that down payments and closing costs get assistance from the City of Wichita's Home Ownership 80 program. And this may be a question for the city rather than for you, what's the repayment rate on those loans?
Those loans are actually amortizing loans. So is it 10 years?
It's a deferred payment loan is what it is. And
Right.
in the case of Andy's properties that he sells, we forgive half of the loan. What? Oh, microphone. We forgive half of the loan after 10 years, and as long as the person continues to occupy the property. Right. So the down payment assistance is roughly about 20, and we would forgive 10 after 10 years.
And the history on those loans has been successful then?
For the most part, it has. Yes, Andy mentioned there's been a very low foreclosure rate on those. We find that a lot of the buyers that purchase homes from Mennonite Housing, some of our other developers that work with our program, the longevity in their homes is extended. They tend to stay for quite some time.
You know, along that same line, with the current market we've been blessed with very nice interest rates. But what we have noticed is that affordability has really targeted, I like to keep it into simplest terms, is how much are they out each month? And for the most part, we've been, say, $625 or less, much less usually, that the consumer has to pay principal, interest, taxes, and insurance. And so that really has been very complimentary. Thus, the only thing that they really have to target on is that monthly payment of whatever they've got their primary funding from.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Other questions from the Grants Review Committee or from the public? Well, if not, thank you very much, Andy.
All
Appreciate
right,
you.
thank you.
Okay, we are a bit ahead of schedule, but that's always a good thing. Our next set of presentations will be from those applying for youth crime prevention and enrichment funds, which come from CDBG. And the first presenter is Kansas Big Brothers and Big Sisters.
Good afternoon. My name is Megan McClelland, and I am the Innovation Grant Specialist. And beside me is Janice Wright. She is the Innovation Program Director, and we represent Kansas Big Brothers Big Sisters and our application to enhance our services for middle school youth for the Youth Crime Prevention and Enrichment Funding. Kansas Big Brothers Big Sisters, as I'm sure most of you are all aware, is that we serve youth ages 5 to 17 traditionally, and providing them a positive role model in their life so that they can be successful. We serve primarily low-income youth, single-parent homes, and we serve in 89 of our Kansas counties. That's something that a lot of you may not be aware of. But we serve statewide. We're about 6,000 annually of kids that we have matched with mentors and serve on an annual basis. Something that we really have tried to do in the last few years is move from matching youth who we consider at risk to really making sure that we're serving them the best that we can and really reaching out to those who are high risk. So in 2004, on a national level, we started moving towards serving kids who have incarcerated parents, trying to provide them mentors so that they're not continuing that cycle of incarceration. In 2010, we started a juvenile justice initiative on a nationwide level, and Kansas was a pilot agency for that in providing mentors for kids who have been through the juvenile justice system. Once our CEO came in 2011, we him, along with our Chief Development Officer, worked to really take that even a step further for Kansas and really make sure that we were providing a continuum of services for these youth and really making sure that we're staying on top of our community need as well as the need of our kids. So they proposed wrote a proposal, for the Mid-Atlantic Network of Youth and Family Services and received that funding. We were one of 5 programs nationwide to receive that funding. Kansas Big Brothers Big Sisters was the only mentoring organization to receive that money, and it was to provide services to youth ages 16 to 24 who have had that history with the juvenile justice system, and really providing them the wraparound services that they need to succeed. It was a citywide collaborative, so we had various partners that worked with them on education, workforce, community-wide violence reduction, restorative justice, many things that were very successful for our youth. And it was the success of this program that has led us to submit this proposal in trying to provide these same services to middle school youth. So I am going to turn it over to Janice. She is the director for the program and can give you further details on the success of our Positive Pathways program and what we are trying to provide to these middle school youth.
Thank you. Good afternoon, and thank you for having us out. So I'm just going to brief on the side of your informational that says Positive Pathways program. We're entering into our 3rd year. We were funded by 2 Department of Labor grants this year to serve youth 14 to 24. That was imperative because we were allowed to serve youth 2 years younger, so we're catching them early. However, what we're proposing from you is to expand our reach and to reach into middle school and to catch those young people who are maybe in the delinquency stage before they've actually hit the offenders. So runaways, truancies, status offenses like minors in possession and things like that. So what the program does is we are a collaboration of partners, which you'll find at the bottom. What that does is it allows us to function not only under our capacity as an organization, Big Brothers and Big Sisters, but the capacity of all of our partners as well. So those services are definitely priority for the youth who come to our program with all of our partner agencies. So next you'll see the services provided, which is just above that. Again, those services are always available to all youth. Some youth utilize all of them, some only use some of them. And the average time that a youth spends in our program of 11 months, generally they've touched on all of these areas. And so that just moves us up to success of the Positive Pathways program in our first 2 years, 2012 and 2013, of implementing this program here in the city of Wichita. We enrolled 192 youth. Those youth were 16 to 24. They were all juvenile offenders. Of those youth, 54 entered into permanent workforce placement and sustained that through the follow-up of at least 3 months. Another 21 entered into college, into post-secondary education, and sustained that through the first semester of follow-up. And then another 72 who were high school and middle school dropouts had re-entered in to finish their post-secondary education through either traditional school or GED completion. But I think the most relevant part for this program is the recidivism rate. Again, knowing that they were all juvenile offenders at the time they entered their program, we had a 1% recidivism rate. So again, we're just asking for this funding to extend our reach a little bit, catch them a little bit earlier. We know these services work, so we would like to see them keep on track with school and not become dropouts by the time they come to us. A lot of times they're already dropouts. And to also just expand their capacity. We use the positive youth development model, which means we don't direct the youth. The youth let us know the direction they want to go in. We support them. We have helped them identify with their own personal attributes, connect them to the community, and then of course the mentoring piece is most important because that mentor goes with them beyond their time in our program. So thank you.
Are there questions for Big Brothers Big Sisters from the Grants Review Committee? Questions from the public for Big Brothers Big Sisters? Well, thank you, ladies.
Thank you.
The second presenter is Rainbows United.
Good afternoon. My name is Jennifer Stanier, and I am the Family Support Services Coordinator for Rainbows United. I want to thank you on behalf of Rainbows for the opportunity to apply for this funding. This will be our 4th year for applying, and it continues to be very helpful for our families. Our Family Support Services program is located off of 21st Street in Northwest Wichita. It's at our Kids Cove location. It's there that we serve youth with developmental and intellectual and developmental disabilities, age 6 to 21. All youth we serve have either the diagnosis of intellectual or developmental disability, they're in special education, or they have an IEP, an individualized education plan through the school system. Many of these children have severe behaviors that require structure, specialized care, and supports that currently are not available in other programs in the community. Our programs provide that structure and support and supervision that's vital for these very unique individuals. At Kids Cove, we work with children to develop social skills and how to work through challenges they have in behavior management. We feel that these supports are vital in keeping these children out of the juvenile justice system and preventing them from becoming involved with crime in our community. Many of the children we serve have such severe behaviors that without proper supports, they are a danger to themselves and others. We have children that are at both ends of the spectrum in regards to behaviors that can be triggered by a simple gesture from another child saying, hello, 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 and not getting an answer, or by not having a particular staff that they want when they come in. Something is what we might think is as minor as that, just not knowing that they're not going to have that buddy can send them into a spiral of behaviors. These behaviors can become so severe that the child's actions become physically aggressive to our staff and those around them. In the community, these behaviors do not come without a consequence, as a lot of us know. In our center-based services, our staff work with each child to become familiar with those things that trigger those behaviors and work through them with the client, and then teaching them how to self-calm themselves and be able to recognize when their behaviors, when things are kind of getting out of control and they're getting to a point where they can't come back down. So we have a child, for example, that's overly friendly and persistent in getting others to communicate with him. He lacks the ability to recognize when it's socially inappropriate to communicate with others. And he also, he can't recognize the social cues. So where we might, know how to converse with one another, this child just cannot recognize that. So it's our concern that he would be a victim to bullying or getting beat up out in the community. This child also comes from a single-parent household, so if no funding was available for him to attend camp, he would have to his days would be spent at his mom's office. So not very many, and he wouldn't have that opportunity to work on social skills sitting there with mom. So not very many 13-year-old boys I know would like to spend their days at the office with mom. So also this past year we have gotten to know a middle school girl who is very social and caring, and she's just naturally nurturing to other students. She enjoys music and she's a great dancer. Her vulnerability, which is a concern to us, is a tendency to act and dance in suggestive ways. By her actions, she is at risk of being exploited and manipulated. We found ways to redirect her and reinforce her behaviors more appropriate for her age. The close supervision of our program and our communication with her parents helps us to prevent her risky behaviors and teaching her socially what's appropriate and what's not appropriate. This funding for our program is essential in the success of these children and families. Through this program, we help strengthen families by giving parents a break from the constant demands of caring for their children with special needs and support them through the changes of adolescence. We thank you for your consideration of this request. We're happy to answer any questions you may have. Yes?
Well, this doesn't specifically refer to your funding, but when these kids reach 21 and some of them still are not able to be socialized well, where do they go? Do they go to Starkey's or?
Typically, they do, at 21, they go into the adult services and are kind of picked up from there. So, yeah, a lot of them love working, or coming to camp, and they want to stay, but it is just kind of that natural, transition for them to go to adult services around that age, so. Yes?
Are you turning away people? Do you not have slots?
Currently, we try and serve as many as we can, but it is a capacity type situation. So we are constantly, at that point where we can only, we have to keep it safe for our families or for our children and staff. So we do, typically we're staffed at a 1-to-1, 1-to-2, sometimes 1-to-3 ratio, depending on that child's needs. So.
The answer would be yes at times?
At times, we do have to, yes, unfortunately. But.
And so do you serve only Wichita or Sedgwick County or statewide?
We serve primarily Sedgwick County. We do have, during camp time, some kids that come from Butler County, but those are very few, I believe, right currently. So, primarily Sedgwick. And they come, I believe, with their own funding, so yeah. Any other questions? Yes.
You're located on East 21st?
Oh, northeast, or northwest. I'm an east sider, so northwest. We're across from the Sedgwick County Zoo, Sedgwick County Park there, the Kids Cove location. Yeah, just where Zoo Boulevard turns into 21st. Any other questions?
Well, if not, thank you, ladies,
Yes,
for your
thank you very
presentation.
much.
And we are now ready for the third group, the third presentation in the Crime Prevention and Enrichment Group, and that is from the YMCA.
Good afternoon. My name is Mim McKenzie. I'm Vice President of Community Development for the Wichita YMCA. Happy to be here. Happy to talk about the middle school after school program. That's the program that we have in front of you. We are very excited because we are celebrating our 20th year this year. And the only way that that is possible is because of the variety of funding that we receive, and most of it being upon the city, United Way, and then the Wichita YMCA ourselves. But truly, the only reason why we're able to do it is through the collaboration with USD 259. And we've been able to have that collaboration, and you will be able to hear about how that works as I go through the process. The middle school after school program is provided Monday through Thursday in 15 of the middle school sites. It is a school-based program. Why that happens is that we work within the school district for transportation, but then also just a safe place. The less we move those students, the better it is. And so we send our staff out to those middle school sites Monday through Thursday from the time school is released until 5 p.m. We release at 5 p.m. due to the transportation that USD 259 provides, the late bus. And then we do not run on Fridays because late buses don't usually run on Fridays, but then also you can tell kids and parents and teachers are ready to go as well. Once a child comes into the program right as soon as school is out, they go into a snack process and then into 30 to 45 minutes of homework time. And then after that, they have enrichment time until 5. So enrichment could vary through Legos, through computers for physical activity, through sports, arts, all different types of different activities. But the joy of this for middle school is that they get to choose the activities that they go into. We don't assign them. They can choose what activities on Monday, and it'll be different on Tuesday. But our job is to make sure that those activities are age appropriate, fun, engaging, and safe for the students to participate in. So we go September through May. We take a break over the Christmas holiday when school is not in session. The school district provides the site, the facility, the site coordinator as well. And so we meet with the school district on a regular basis. We supervise the site coordinators. We have monthly site coordinator meetings. We have staff meetings. We make sure all of our staff are trained as well before they go out into the sites as well. We do a weekly field trip with all the students. We believe taking the kids out of school is also a very good thing, expose them to what opportunities in the community are available to them. And all of this is free to any student within that school that houses the program. And I would challenge you to go anywhere in the country to find a program at the middle school level, provided for free, and being on service for this long, for 20 years. We've been very happy to be able to do that. And again, we evolve as kids evolved, and the focus of the program is to provide a safe, supervised environment for middle school students that changes and serves their needs. Questions? Yes, ma'am.
Might as well, nobody's asked it yet.
Sure.
Obviously, the kids need this program, but what would happen if you didn't have all this funding?
I would ask the chief of police that question. Crime would, I'm not going to say it would go up, but research shows that if you don't have an after-school program, crime goes up, as well as crime committed against the students. This is the time when they are most unsupervised, and so that would be a community response.
I mean, as far as how would you handle it if you could not get our funding? What would that look like for you?
We would probably shut down the program. Or limit to maybe 4 or 5 sites. And how we would decide on those sites, I have no idea.
Other questions?
Yes, ma'am.
Is this the same program that the schools just call the Latchkey program?
No, ma'am. Latchkey is at the elementary level.
Oh, okay.
And it's for a fee, and it's true
Okay.
child care.
Okay.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
All right.
Other questions from the Grant Review Committee or from the public? If not, we thank you. We are now at the point of our final presentation, and that is on the Emergency Solutions Grant Homeless Assistance Funding. And as was presented and explained at your first meeting, HUD requires that the continuum of care evaluate proposals for ESG funding, and they have done so. And while it's not required that you listen in on what those recommendations are, we think that in the context of all that you have to do, that it's helpful. And so we have invited the United Way staff who coordinate the continuum of care to present to you the recommendations for emergency shelter grant funding.
Good afternoon. I'm Beth Oakes. I'm with United Way of the Plains. Today I'm representing the Continuum of Care coordination team and the recommendations on the emergency shelter grant funds. If you'll note in the handout that's being circulated at this point in time, the funding is anticipated to be flat for this next fiscal year, much like it was for this fiscal year, which is down from the 2012-2013 fiscal year. If you start from the bottom up, I'm going to talk about the capped programs. Categories do have caps on them. The first category I want to talk about that has a cap is administration. It is capped at 7.5%. The recommendation is to give the full 7.5% for administration to the city to cover a portion of their costs in administering the program. The second item, still moving up from the bottom, is the Homeless Management Information System. The Department of Housing and Urban Development requires any organization that is receiving HUD dollars to be involved in the Homeless Management Information System. That system is a confidential database that aggregates the data so that it can be used to coordinate care, manage operations, and ultimately better serve the clients. In order to do that, these emergency shelter grant fund partners do need to utilize the HMIS, or Homeless Management Information System, and what we're asking for, or what the recommendation is for that, is funds to assist in covering the increased annual maintenance fee for the software. United Way of the Plains does administer the Homeless Management Information System on behalf of the community. The next category going up is the homeless prevention and rapid rehousing category. The subcommittee reviewed utilization between rapid rehousing and also the prevention categories, and is recommending that we keep that distribution still at a 25-75% split. So 25% of the funds will go to Center of Hope for rent assistance and 75% to the City of Wichita for rapid rehousing. In looking at the emergency solutions grant, or the emergency homeless assistance for emergency shelters, 7 applications were reviewed. When considering those applications, the committee looked at outcomes, how the funds were to be utilized, what percent of the total overall budget, et cetera. If you'll note, I'll just give you some information. The applicants requested increases this year in a range of 3.2% to 100%, with the overall averaging being about 27%. So all of them asked for a significant increase or significant increases. All of these shelters, with the exception of United Methodist Open Doors Homeless Resource Center, are 24/7 operations. So they're open 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. The recommendation from that subcommittee is that we maintain the same funding as the prior year. So for Catholic Charities Harbor House, for those that don't have the advantage of the paperwork that you all have in front of you, they serve women and children fleeing domestic violence. They have a capacity of 40 beds. They requested $13,000, and the subcommittee is recommending $12,600, the same as the prior year. Their Catholic Charities St. Anthony Family Shelter serves families and has a capacity of 69 beds. They requested $22,000, and again, flat funding is being recommended at $21,000. Interfaith Ministries, Interfaith Inn, serves single men and men or women that show up with children. They have a capacity of 50 beds. They requested $21,500. Again, the recommendation is for flat funding of $18,100. The Salvation Army serves single women and homeless families. They have a capacity of 34 beds. They requested $25,000. Again, flat funding of $21,000. Homeless Resource Center, as I indicated earlier, is the community's day shelter. It runs Monday through Friday from 7 a.m. to 5 p.m. They have the capacity to serve 150 clients at any point in time, and sometimes that may be more in a given day, depending on how many individuals cycle in and out of the center. They requested $35,000, and the recommendation is flat with $29,400. The YWCA Women's Crisis Center serves homeless and low-income victims of domestic violence. They have 8 rooms. Their average utilization is 22 individuals a day. They requested $19,031, and again, the recommendation is flat at $10,000. And with that, I will be happy to answer any questions that you all might have.
Are there questions from the Grants Review Committee? If not, the one thing that Beth did not mention, which you might have noticed, is that there was one agency that applied for funding that is not recommended for funding. Actually, I should say one program. It's Interfaith Ministries Warming Souls Winter Shelter. However, I guess it's pretty obvious that funding everybody at the same level, where they all asked for more, might have contributed to that decision not to introduce a new agency into funding. Questions? Comments?
This is probably a dumb question, Beth, but what's the difference on the HMIS between the 928 and the 1,300?
That is the difference of the 383 that would have been the cap. If you look up at the top column, the allocation has the capacity to go up to 60% for homeless services. That difference is $383. The feeling of the committee that 383, instead of trying to figure out how to spread it across 6 or give it to anyone, would best serve the needs of the organizations by putting it in homeless management that served all of them.
Okay.